Picture this. You're in an epic fantasy world. There are dragons, demons, knights, and whatever kind of fantastical thing. People going on adventures, hell, some of them are even saving the world. And through all of it, you're a shopkeep. And on top of that, you don't really care too much about the fantastical stuff happening around you, assuming you even get to see it. This is a very niche subgenre that I call epic adventure adjacent, which is where a story has an intense or dangerous setting without being the focus, or if it is the focus, it's never shown. The most well-known example of this trope I've seen is the Simpsons episode You Only Move Twice. In this episode, Homer is offered a new job at the Globex Corporation in a new town. His boss appreciates him, he gets a beautiful house in a great neighborhood, he loves it. The conflict of the episode comes from how his family members feel about the new place. Marge doesn't have enough work around the house, Bart gets moved into a slow learners class at school, and Lisa is allergic to everything. Homer now has to make the tough call between staying at his new job he loves or moving back to Springfield for his family. The reason why I summarize the entire episode in such detail is because I want to draw attention to how irrelevant the Bond villain plotline in the episode is. It's the best part of the whole episode, but the actual story is extremely interchangeable, which is why it's so funny. They even have the ending of the episode where a Bond movie climax is happening the whole time and Homer just isn't interested in it at all.
Hey, what's going on?
I'm having a little trouble with the government.
Oh, those jerks always walking over to small businessman. Don't get me started about the government.
This is what I'm talking about when I say epic adventure adjacent. There's an entire epic plot going on that is heavily implied, but is by no means the focus or is never seen. An example of the latter can be seen in the game Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, My Life as a King, where you play as a king caring for your citizens and sending men and women out to do raids and fight against the Dark Lord. When they do these raids, you don't get to see it, you just get little pop-ups saying how they did. It's epic adventure adjacent because there is epic adventure happening, you just never get to see it. Funnily enough, the initial inspiration for me talking about this was this video by Spiffing Brit about Final Fantasy XIV, where he breaks the in-game economy by selling items at marked up prices. The main thing I wanted to bring attention to in this video is this line right here.
Oh, goodness. Right, let's go make some cash. So, what item are we looking at today?
Food/meals and potions, because it is reset and people are going to be raiding if we capitalize that market.
People are going to be raiding if we capitalize that market. There are adventures going on. People are raiding dungeons, but instead of doing that, these players are selling goods to make a profit off the players who are actually going on adventures like the developers intended. I don't play a lot of MMOs, but based on my admittedly limited experience, I think a lot of MMOs have things comparable to this. EVE Online and WoW. I've never played either, but I don't want people to get mad at me for acting like FF14 is the only game that does this, so there you go. Moon Remix is a PS1 game from 1997 in which you play as a normal person in a JRPG fantasy world. Thanks to this premise, you get to see the JRPG hero from the perspective of a normal person, watching him run around killing random creatures and ransacking houses for items and gold. The game even advertises itself as an anti-RPG. One could argue that Moon isn't epic adventure adjacent, since your goal is to revive all of the monsters the hero is killing, creating a very direct connection between the player and the RPG hero. I'm gonna argue that it is, because one, whenever the hero crosses paths with the player, he's unaware of what's actually happening, like with Homer and You Only Move Twice. And two, the primary point of the game is to show the typical RPG stuff from the perspective of a normal person. The creator of the game even said that the basic idea was that if a hero came in the real world, he would appear as a strange person. There's one movie I want to talk about, because it's the same as You Only Move Twice, but inverted, and that movie is History of Violence. In that movie, the main character's past criminal life is extremely important. It's the whole point of the movie. But we never get to see it, only vague references.
Sorry, do you think we know each other?
You tell me.
As I was writing this video, I was actually reminded of another movie that I love that does the exact same thing, Reservoir Dogs, which is a heist movie where we never get to see the heist. We get to see what happens before the heist, we get to see what happens after the heist, but we never get to see the heist. And just like History of Violence, we only get vague references.
Show up until after Mr. Blanc started shooting everybody.
As soon as I heard the alarm, I saw the
No,
cops.
man, I'm telling you, it wasn't that soon, okay? They didn't let their presence be known until after Mr. Blonde became a madman, all right? I'm not saying they weren't there. I'm saying they were there.
It honestly makes sense that Reservoir Dogs would be epic adventure adjacent, since a big portion of Quentin Tarantino's films are about providing new perspectives on tropes in films he's intimately familiar with. There's an argument to be made that what I'm talking about are two different subgenres. One where action is shown but isn't important, and one where it isn't shown but is extremely important. If I wanted to split hairs, I'd probably call the latter vague, inciting incident. I'm not going to do this because although these seem like two different kinds of stories when described literally, I think they should both be put under the same label, since all of these stories provide new perspectives on stories that have been done time and time again. Which, if you ask me, is what makes them the same. During the events of a James Bond film, what does a day in the life of an employee for the villain look like? In an RPG, how would normal people view the protagonist? When the heroes are out saving the day and vanquishing monsters, what's the king back in town doing? What does a gang member or hitman do when they want to leave their criminal life behind? Even Reservoir Dogs is applicable here, since the conflict isn't about a heist, it's about the characters trying to figure out why a heist failed. That's what I love so much about this style of story. It's a story that starts from a standard template, so it can view those stories from a new lens instead of showing what's expected. It's the stories of Superman and Chosen Ones from the perspective of someone like you or me. Either that, or it's a story that purposefully neglects to show exciting imagery to show parts of stories not normally explored. But the main reason I'm making this video is because I haven't seen anyone break it down or give it a name. It's such an awesome style of story, but no one's categorized it. Closest I've seen is people calling it an anti-insert genre here story, but I've seen no specific naming or labeling of it. So to summarize, epic adventure adjacent is a story where either intense action and adventure is shown without being the focus, or intense action and adventure isn't shown while being what the story is primarily about. And then there are some stories that do a bit of both, like Moon Remix, which shows the typical RPG stuff, but from the perspective of a normal person. So go out there and give this label to stuff. Hell, if you can think of a better name than epic adventure adjacent, go ahead and use that. I just want this kind of story to be categorized.